Welcome, everyone, to the Islanders Never Say Die podcast. I'm your host, TJ, and with me here, as always, is our NHL analyst and expert, the grumpy old man. They say there's no shame to his game because he's always the same.
That's me.
And with us here, special guest, I would say, one of the best beat writers, the best Islanders beat writer there is.
He's one of those. Hold on. He's one of those boot-licking weasel Islander media cartel people.
No, he's not. He's one that fights the good fight, Grumpy.
No,
We got
Stefen
Rosner on the show with us here this evening. And Stefen had spent, I guess last year was his first full year on the beat. This year he's got huge weight to carry on his shoulder. He's going to be writing for the Hockey News, NHL.com. He's got the podcast. I mean, Stefen does a little bit of everything. He's got the podcast Hockey Night in NY. First off, thank you out of the busy time that in the large schedule that you've got for coming onto the show. How was the first year on the beat there, Stefen?
Well, both of you, thank you for having me. It was incredible. I can't say enough good things about the Islanders staff who travels, the other media members. It's surreal. Again, growing up as an Islander fan, getting to cover the team and then going on the road and all the stuff that comes with that, seeing the players, but also just, again, going out to dinners and making new connections. That was the real cool part about it.
Yeah, and a few other housekeeping items too. If you're new, you don't know who Stefen is, covers everything all New York Islanders. You can find him on a few different places, right? Some may popularly know him and they follow him on Twitter. Again, this is the Twitter page. This is all linked in the description below. Again, you'll also see him covering the New York Islanders on the Hockey News and also there for NHL.com. You'll also be able to see him on the Hockey Night NY, that Twitter page as well. So that's always the best place to find Stefen. You're going to find all of that and the links in the description below. But a first busy year on the books there for Stefen. Now let me ask you, I know you said it was a good experience.
Also, you can find Stefen at your local barbershop. I mean,
he's got a fresh cut, Grump.
That haircut's high and tight, my man.
Oh yeah, you know it. I had to look good for this.
I understand.
I can't show up your haircut, but I'm just saying.
Well, that's true. I don't have it. Here's the thing. I couldn't pull off your haircut anymore either. So.
That's a fact.
But first full year in the books, things obviously went well. I always want to hear a little bit about, your thoughts on the Islanders this last season. I mean, it was a year to where things kind of got bleak a little bit, midway through the year, and kind of, I'd say really before the deadline, I'd say things kind of looked bleak. And, at the time period, we made trades. We went ahead and add guys like Bo Horvat at a time period when we were without Matt Barzal. And we did make a heroic effort to make the postseason and then, got bounced in 6. But this is a year, I think, where we had some extreme possible downs, and we had a little bit of an up. But I wanted to kind of better understand what your thoughts were on the team this year.
Yeah, it had it all, right? You had the ups and the downs, and I think it was different because there was no Trotz, right? And we know everything that happened with that. Lane Lambert's coming in as a rookie head coach with a veteran team that needs to, just miss the playoffs. It's a lot of pressure on him, and I think early on he tried to make this team more offensive. And I think until December, the beginning of December, the Islanders were playing great offensively. I think they were averaging over 3.5 goals per game, but they were allowing goals. And that was the biggest issue. I remember we spoke to Lou in Colorado in December, and he said, I'll take the output offensively, but we have to clean up things in our own zone. And then once Adam Pelech went down, I think everything just unraveled. The defense, clearly he's the bread and butter of this team. The defensive structure isn't as strong when he's not there. And again, other guys like a Noah Dobson couldn't pick up the hole that Pelech leaves behind. Then you had the Barzal injury. You had Palmieri out of the lineup twice for concussions, and then he eventually came back and really figured it out. So I think first half of the season, there was a lot of trial and error, and then injuries obviously forced 5 or 6 call-ups where we saw players make their NHL debut, and that's a lot of players to make their NHL's debut, and I think that's the biggest reason why we saw Lugo bring in some depth this summer, because, again, you put people in situations like William Dufour, for example, gets called up to play the Boston Bruins, the juggernaut historical team, plays 8 minutes, 1 period, he's with Barzal, makes a couple mistakes, gets sent down. If the Islanders had depth, NHL-ready depth, Dufour is not getting called up. Maybe other guys aren't either, and I think that was a real issue. But then, again, second half, Palmieri comes back. Engvall comes aboard. That second line, that Brock Nelson line, carries this team to the playoffs. And in the playoffs, they were easily the Islanders' best line. And I think, again, having Horvat and Barzal together for 6 games, you showed, what the possibility of those two could be in a full year. But obviously that was cut short. Horvat did a lot of the good things defensively, but without Barzal, there was really nothing for him to do offensively. He could have scored, obviously, a ton more goals. It just, there was no chemistry with his line mates. But yeah, I mean, I think the biggest takeaway was that second line, that you call it the second line, whatever, but that Nelson, Engvall, Palmieri line was dominant, and it's why Engvall's back. And I think a lot of your what ifs in the second half, like what if this happened? What if Palmieri was healthy the whole first half of the season? If Pelech doesn't miss time, are the Islanders in a better spot? Now, I don't think the Islanders would have been better than a top wildcard spot, but will it take 82 games? Probably not, because there was a lot of games too where they come out flat. They lost to those really bad teams. And I think for the Islanders, when you look at how good the Metro is and how many teams upgraded on paper, we'll see if that worked out. You can't have that this year. Last year, you could get away with it because those teams that were teetering on playoff spots, like the Penguins, the Capitals for a while, they struggled just as much when the Islanders struggled in January. And I think this year, the Islanders have to take advantage of those teams still. Maybe Carlson makes a big difference. Who knows? But if the Islanders come out flat against those weaker teams again, they're going to find themselves in the same spot. So I think there's a lot to be positive. There's a lot of positives to look at this season, but if those negatives don't change, the slow starts, the power play, the Islanders are going to have a really hard time making the playoffs.
They had the same issues under Barry Trotz, though.
Yeah.
Where they come out flat to start games. And at some point in time, players got to look themselves in the mirror. I mean, you come out flat, there's only so much a coach can do. And I mean, it's a continuation. And I think the players need to look at themselves. And maybe Captain Average needs to look at himself in the mirror and maybe get his leadership. Hey, guys, let's go out there and come up a little bit more fired up. And and you know what? Physician, treat thyself, Captain Average, because I didn't see a whole lot of you last year. The only thing I want to disagree is you said the second line was great, which led us to the playoffs. It was Ilya Sorokin. Without him.
Well, I mean, I think that's the comment. Obviously, Sorokin had to play a part, but the offense, that was primarily that second line. But yeah, without Sorokin, this team, I'm not saying they're a bottom team or they're fighting for Bedard, but they would have missed. And again, Varlamov was solid enough, but at the same time, he was hurt. So I think, and Sorokin did carry him to the playoffs, and I think that was a major issue, is because they relied heavily on Sorokin too much. And I'm not going to say he burnt out, because I think he's truly he's a superstar goaltender, but I think that there was a lot of weight on his shoulder late, especially after the deadline, when you could have gotten Varlamov. If you trusted Varlamov enough to keep him to the deadline and re-sign him, then you should trust him in big moments to play against tough competition. But instead, Sorokin got all that pressure. And then obviously we saw what happened against Carolina, game 2. Definitely one of Sorokin's worst performances, and he'll talk about that. And that last goal, of course, to send the Islanders home. That's a goal that can't go in, awkward angle, and then everyone wants to blame Sorokin, but the Islanders don't get a playoff chance if Sorokin's not Sorokin.
that's the way I look at it. It's like the analogy of the bad news bears. Kelly Leak, does he get thrown out at home plate? And they lose the championship, sure. But without Kelly Leak, they're not even in the playoffs. They're the worst team in the league. And they've got no chance. They don't have any sort of success. So I never understood the blame that people tried to cast on him. It was always kind of mind boggling to me. Now, did you happen to see the poll? I guess it was that was gauging fan confidence and confidence that
Yes.
Islander fans have, confidence that NHL fans in general have a role in the league. And it was noticeable this year that we were at the bottom. I think we were the last team, at least regarding how much confidence the fan base has, and even other fans, just NHL fans in general, have going into this year compared to last year. What do you think is the reason as to why we see such a lot of or the lack of confidence, or the thought process of the team won't be as good as it was last year, lack of confidence compared to last year?
Well, I think for average NHL fans, even average Islander fans, but they look at this roster and they do the simple, it's the same team. Running back the same team that took 82 games, same issues. You didn't make any upgrades. Yeah, there's no faith in Lou because he couldn't go out and do what he had to do. And then if you're, a diehard Islander fan, or you're part of the media, when you look at, okay, I understand that argument. I really do. But, you have a full year back of Horvat and Barzal. You have that second line Engvall's back. You have health. Again, I don't know if health will keep up, but you have a healthy Pelech. So things, I think the Islanders will be better even if they just made the same moves. But again, it comes down to, those same problems that we've had is the power play and the slow starts. Like I just said before, you can bring in whoever you want. You could bring in a superstar. Let's say they went and got DeBrincat. He's not going to change the slow start, and he might help the power play. But again, that's more of the people already here that needs to be fixed. One or two players coming in aren't fixing those underlying issues. I guess in terms of trust with Lou is also people look at his past, what he left. The Devils fans, despite him winning cups with the Devils, he left that team in quote unquote turmoil financially. He goes to Toronto and they have some financial issues. So now people look and say, okay, Islanders have bad contracts, aging guys, bottom six guys getting paid too much. Lou's doing the same thing, so therefore there's no trust. Now, I'm not telling you to trust Lou or not. Quite frankly, your opinion doesn't matter, or anyone's opinion, and Lou, quite frankly, doesn't care. That's how Lou operates. Like, he definitely reads into what fans say for sure, and the beat. He reads everything. But at the end of the day, he believes he's doing what's best, whether you agree or not. And so if someone wants to vote in a poll that they don't trust him, he doesn't. He's got the job. So management trusts him, and that's really all that matters for his job security.
And like the one thing I say that could affect him, or to force him maybe to take, I guess, the temperature of the room. Last year when we were struggling towards the middle of the season, man, oh man, even on weekend games, the UBS, right, 2 years ago was the first year at UBS Arena, pretty much sold out on a pretty consistent basis, brand new arena. You're going to have a lot of people going there for the experience of, hey, we got to see it in the inaugural season. Last year we had time periods when we were struggling, where, man, there were a lot of empty seats, and some, albeit were definitely weeknight games. You're not expecting to sell those out all the time. But I just wonder if we were to go through the same exact, let's say we go through troubles, let's say the season, gets derailed. I wonder how quickly that kind of perks the years of ownership, perks the years possibly of the general manager when people aren't going to games. That's when I feel like your job is truly in jeopardy, when, the people that pay you to, to put a product on the ice, you're not winning.
Yeah, I mean, for last year, I think Lou, again, the struggles that were there before he made the trades is obviously on him, building the team, and it wasn't strong enough. And maybe there was so much behind the scenes with the Trot stuff. So they hire Lane. I think if you look back, should Lou have brought in a veteran head coach for a veteran group that needed to make the playoffs? I think so. Now, a lot of the players credited Lane back in January for getting the team, hey, we're struggling, but to get us there. So he got credit for that. And again, he made rookie mistakes, but I think there was a time there where you can't afford rookie mistakes on a team that's a window if you believe their window's closing. I mean, if you're a young up and coming team, then you can bring a rookie head coach because he's going to learn with the team. But the Islanders' timetable isn't as long as, again, people may think. So I think that was an issue, but Lou went and made the moves he should have made. Barzal goes down. He already got Horvat, which the Islanders needed. He went and got the best free agent available just a couple of months early. And I think locking him up with Smart, he liked what he saw. And then when Barzal went down, the Islanders needed speed. And he went and got Pierre Engvall, who he knew already from working in Toronto, and it worked out. And I'm not saying Engvall is a second-line player in the NHL or why it worked with Palmieri and Nelson, but it worked, and he brought him back. And I think if you look at that and they let Engvall go and that Palmieri and Nelson doesn't work out, or Engvall goes and shines somewhere else, he would have been pitching himself. So I think it was smart to bring him back. If the seats are empty, I think if the season starts off very slow, I think Lane's in the hot seat for sure. And if the Islanders do miss the playoffs, I think Lou's job, I don't think Lou's job was ever really in jeopardy, just because they had made the playoffs this past year anyway. Again, but I think if they missing in 2 of the last 3 years of a brand new building, then management, I think, has to be like, you know what? We kept giving you the benefit of the doubt, and we can't miss the playoffs 2 out of 3 years in a brand new arena. That's just not going to work financially, because they're going to keep raising ticket prices. People are going to get pissed off, and they can't really have that.
And you're 81 years old.
But I mean, listen, the one thing I will say about age, for sure, and you could say that maybe Lou is acting his age, is like, Parise and Char are the best examples. Char was 45. He played to his age, right? Parise, 38, just turned 39. He played like a 28-year-old. So as long as you don't act your age, then you're good. Now, people could question Lou and being outdated, and that's a fair argument if you think that he's behind with those things, which I definitely know you do.
I do.
But yeah, I think again, you look at the moves that Lou made, and that's what you want any general manager. Those moves are what you want a general manager to make when a team's teetering. Again, go back to the moves he made in signing those bottom 6 guys to maybe high contracts, the Anders Lee deal, things like that. But I think if you look at last year as a whole, I think he nailed what he had to do. Again, this summer, he wanted to go get a goal scorer, and they didn't get that. But again, that's a lot to do with, that's a two-way street. And again, it's his job to do that. But I think a lot of players wanted to take 1-year deals this offseason because the cap's going up. So I think this is a great opportunity to see what the Islanders could do at the deadline if they're in it, and they can maybe go get that sniper now at the deadline rather than have to wait till the summer and do that whole thing again.
And I was about to say here, now Lane, we obviously get to watch him from the seats at the house. Yeah. We don't have as close of a relationship or know kind of the inner workings or how to read the room necessarily, maybe like you do there, having
we have no relationship.
Exactly. Lane, it's not like we're giving Lane, shooting him a text message like, oh man, what'd you think about that? Well, obviously you've got a much closer relationship than that. Now I'll ask you, did you feel like over the season there was, did he always feel like he was comfortable? Do you feel like he always felt comfortable in the seat and the new role from when he started? Or did you feel like over time there was additional comfort that, he kind of got more acclimated to the role? Or was he just kind of, hey, this is exactly the same way and it's always been the same since I stepped in?
Yeah, so he was asked that a lot throughout the season, especially at the end, like, what'd you learn? How was it? And I think for him, it was just as if he was the head coach the last couple of years under Trotz, and just he knew the group, he knew the room. I think early on, again, I don't know this for a fact, but he seemed a little overwhelmed. Like, I remember we were in Florida for a game, and the Islanders lost. And after he's leaving the room, like, he showed clear, like, he was pissed. And I think that when they were losing a lot of those games in late December, early January, I think, again, if you're a coach and your team's losing and you're trying to X, Y, and Z and it's not working, that's got to be frustrating, especially when you can't play. Especially when you play in the league. So you know what it takes to be an NHLer. So I think at times there was frustration, but in terms of just interacting with Lane, he was the complete opposite of Trotz. Trotz would talk forever, have to get cut off. He was, laughing. For Lane, it was business. You're going to ask a question. I'm going to give you my answer the way I want to give you the answer, and we're going to move on. So it was tough to gauge just Lane as a person because that's the way he acted. But apparently, talking with some people, that's how Lane was as a player. So it wasn't, people thought maybe he's just putting this on because that's what Lou wants. And I think part of it was Lou wanted a straight shooter like Lane where he doesn't give up a lot of information. But apparently Lane, that's how Lane is. So maybe that helped him get the job. I think he definitely got comfortable over time. Again, I think he had a lot, you look at all the injuries he had to deal with. And again, this is not the roster that he made. This is Lou's roster. So at certain points when he's calling up all these prospects, or he's playing Nikita Shashnikov or guys like that, if they're playing better in the rink, that's not Lane. Lane limits their minutes and things like that, but that's the roster he was given. So I think issues with that and the line combinations of people getting pissed at Lane for not sticking with things. Like, unfortunately, Lane, that's the group Lane had to figure it out with. And I'm not saying that's fair on Lane. That's just the reality of the business. We saw with Trotz. Trotz was asking for a scorer for years and never got that. So at some point, it's like, okay, what is Trotz supposed to do? So I think for Lane, in year 2, he has no choice. He has to make adjustments and can't have rookie mistakes like he made last year. And I think he'll be fine. I think a lot of it, too, and I wrote an article right when the season ended about how, the Lane, people criticize Lane, but I think a lot of it had to do with his staff. John McLean, which I'm not going to say that he deserves full blame for the power play because, like Grumpy said, the players have to look in the mirror. You look at all the guys that are on the power play units. These guys are scoring goals on 5-on-5. They're not inept goal scorers. And I think there's a lot of it was, the mental stuff, especially Dobson. I think it was all mental. We talked to Pulak after the year about that, and he said, it's a lot when you get tasked with a job like that and you lose Barzal and things like that. But I think, I don't think McLean helped Lane a lot. Again, the power play struggled. That was vital. That cost him a ton of points. The defensive coach, I'm blanking right now, but the defense wasn't great last year. It wasn't. And you saw like Dobson again. You want to see Dobson take steps under. Why am I blanking on his name right now? The assistant.
Hula or Hala? What am I thinking?
Yeah, Doug Huda. Sorry, Doug Huda was responsible for helping Maurice Sider on the Detroit Red Wings grow into that superstar type guy. And you thought, okay, you saw it with Romanov. You saw Romanov get exponentially better. You just didn't see Dobson take the strides defensively that you wanted to see. And again, Lane had no choice when Barzal went down. He kept relying on Dobson for the power play, and McLean wasn't making adjustments. And I think a lot of issues were from that, and from his assistant coaches not maybe carrying their weight. Again, Lane's the head boss. If the power play is not working, Lane could override anything McLean's doing. Lane could override anything Doug's doing. And I think that's when the first year of head coaching stuff is he's not used to having to do that, where he has that power. And I think at times he should have flexed that power a little more. It shouldn't wait until the last game of the playoffs to make a power play change when the power play was bad all year. So I think this year coming in, if the staff is the same, everyone on that staff's got to take a step forward to help Lane out.
Now we're under the perception that the staff is completely the same. McLean is still there. Everybody is still there. Power play coach who struggled last year. Like from my standpoint, and I've always been a guy where you don't change the stripes on a zebra. If a power play coach has a certain mentality and a certain way he likes to go ahead and coach and try to go ahead and generate points on the power play and goals, he probably is not going to have a drastic change to that, or even really any change at all, because a lot of coaches don't do that. And that's something we gave Lane a lot of credit for, is he wanted to play more of a high flying offensive system with a heavy forecheck. He noticed that didn't work. He adjusted. That's something we were very complimentary of him. Not many coaches do that.
No.
Now for McLean, I mean, like if he's still going to be back, I don't know how much
autonomy does Lane have? Or I'm not going to say he's Lou's puppet, but does Lou have maybe more input on game day decisions than a normal general manager would have?
I don't know. So I don't know about game decisions. I know for a fact like McLean wasn't the top option to come in. They hired someone previously and then they cut him and then he signed with the Sharks. Brian Weissman was hired and there was a whole so it became like a second, third option to bring McLean on, someone he knew, someone he obviously had as a player, and then a coach. So I think there was comfort there with Lou at the last second. We got to bring in a power play guy. Now he's fired McLean, like a month or two when he was the head coach of the Devils. He had no issue firing him then. So when we asked Lou in Nashville for the draft, is your staff coming back? He would never give us a clear answer. So my mindset was, we know Lane's coming back. I would think Huda's coming back. But is McLean coming back? Because again, McLean wasn't supposed to be the guy. So if they moved, even if he had like a solid year as a power play coach, that wasn't the guy that Lane or Lou wanted from the beginning. So maybe they make the move there. I'm not sure. You're looking at the power play and what went wrong, how you can bring him back, even if it's not his fault. I think there's a lot of blame to go on the players. Again, McLean can only set something up. You guys are NHL caliber players that are potting 40 goals, 30 goals in the regular season. So when you have a prime chance to score in tight or and you miss, that's not really on the coach. It reflects poorly on him. But so I don't really know how they bring him back if they believe it's not the player's fault. So if he is back, I think that's a prime example of Lou putting onus on, hey, we're bringing McLean back. You guys, everyone struggled on the power play, but at times you guys have to pick it up. Because again, Dobson struggled mightily. Does McLean have to make a move there? Yeah. Does Dobson have to figure it out at some point on the power play? Yeah. And again, if Dobson's not going to carry the puck over with ease, there's guys on this team that could break through the neutral zone. We see it again on 5-on-5. Engvall Cup could have done it. I thought maybe at one point, just put the Nelson line out there as your top power play unit and put two defensemen. They were overcomplicating it way too much. And I think the last two power play goals the Islanders scored was Sebastian Aho at the point, quarterbacking, firing wrist shots in on goal and deflections. Anders Lee scored one the last game against the Canadiens, and the Islanders only scored one power play goal in 18 chances in the playoffs, which was an Aho shot deflected by Palmieri. I think, especially, I talked to Rob Schrem, former Islander, this summer. He's a big power play guru, and he breaks film down. He said the biggest thing is guys just don't look towards goal. When you're at the point, just shoot the puck on goal. Keep it simple. We've heard the expression, keep it simple, stupid. But it really is. If that's how you beat goalies in today's NHL, you screen them. And if they make the save, you can't see it and you can't react accordingly. The rebound's going to go somewhere where the goalie doesn't want it to go, and you have a prime chance there. By passing and playing so much on the perimeter, it makes it so easy for the goalie, for the defense. And again, you need to see if they go into camp with McLean back with the same power play unit. You got to see, just again, simple.
That was about to say that, like, maybe I still have a little bit of hope. Maybe it's foolish optimism on my part, but that was, I guess, that's what Lou said. It took him so long to go ahead and address the media, address the fans, was because he had some questions that he had to get answered about, certain, speaking in.
I asked him the question and he responded back, "But if you have any suggestions, let me know." And I was like, "Oh, Lou, I'm not gonna do that." But yeah, because again, a lot of these things we talked about was concerned the slow starts. Anders Lee, I mean, again, I've only been in one locker room before. This locker room is very tight. We all know that. The leadership doesn't just stop from Lee and the assistants. Everyone has a say, whether you're a 2-year vet or like even Parise, for example. Parise is quiet, but he leads by example on the ice. And you have a lot of those. So, but again, though, it comes down to, hey, if the team is going, not showing up for games, first off, I'm not sure you blame the coach for that. It's one thing if you're playing Pee-wee hockey and they're like 8 or 9-year-olds and they're not focused and stuff. But again, I've never been an NHL player, never had that salary, never had that will really to play to that level. I don't think a coach has to get those players hyped up to play NHL hockey. And I think, I don't ever want to say that they weren't trying, because I really don't believe that. But maybe the preparation just wasn't good enough to go into games where, not saying they're going out and partying or doing anything like that, but hey, when the puck drops, we need more from so-and-so. We need more from the leaders. And I think that goes back to leadership. And maybe that it is too close of a group. Again, moving Josh Bailey, I'm very curious to see how that impacts the room in terms of not just obviously losing Bailey, because everyone talks highly in the room about him, but again, someone that was here for so long, that was a leader, whether he played or not, he's gone now. So how is that, is that a wake-up call? Is that a wake-up call enough, I guess, for this group to think and go, oh, okay, so, again, Bailey wasn't playing every day, but we just took a big piece of this room out because of X, Y, and Z. Now, maybe does that mean, do we see that maybe no more slow starts? Like that was a proven point, or does that not get the point across? And you got to make moves, at the deadline and move another player. Like, for example, there was talks like Pajot would get moved this summer, or, could we even see a guy like Brock Nelson, who's in his prime despite being over 30, get traded, for example, and things like that. And, we were waiting. Bavillier, I think that was a perfect example. That shook the room a little bit. When Bavillier got moved in the Horvat deal because, Barzal's best friend since they were kids is Bo. A lot of guys had strong relationships and it was tough. And I think Bo Horvat coming in, the player they got back, helped the room because one, it's a leader, two, it's a guy that producing, and that'll help fill the hole. But I thought that was a pretty big wake-up call because, again, that Bavillier scored one of the biggest goals in the last decade of Islanders hockey, that overtime goal. So you took a big key piece of that room and you took him away. And I think it did work, but you don't want to have to do that. If you could avoid moving those key pieces of that room, not saying the best players in the room, just key pieces, you don't want to do that because this group is tight and you need chemistry like that on and off the ice. But if we get to the deadline this past year and the Islanders are shaky, I wouldn't be shocked to see a staple maybe on the move.
Now, and something I wanted to talking about moves or potential new faces. Now, you wrote an article recently. I believe you wrote an article recently, and Coach Tommy B asked the question there, Stefen, do you think that Thomas Tatar is possibly an Islander, and maybe he fits that mold as well, because he's a guy who still hasn't signed a contract? You'd think that he's got some still left in the tank and he can contribute. Do you think possibly he's an Islander, just being everything so quiet around him?
Yeah, I think it's definitely possible. And I wrote in the article too, there's a couple of reasons why Tatar would make sense. I think if Parise is coming back, which again, we're not sure yet. If Parise is coming back and Clutterbuck's healthy and they're playing, Tatar is not a need. Now, yes, he'll help the power play, but might as well let young players play. However,
don't have any
young prospects that are ranked at the bottom of the prospect pool play. But if Parise isn't back, Tatar can fill that role. Yes, Holmstrom might be getting groomed for that job eventually, a defensive guy, but I think Tatar brings more. He just scored 20 goals last year. Now Tatar is not a playoff player at all, and that's been a knock, maybe like why he isn't getting signed or why the Islanders shouldn't go after him and stuff. Well, Tatar is one of those players that maybe doesn't play in the playoffs correctly and doesn't get the points, but is one of those players that gets you there. That was the big thing with Eberle and Palmieri, right? Eberle was, wasn't great in the playoffs for the Islanders, but he had some great seasons where he helped get them there. And Palmieri, that whole thing was Palmieri wasn't great in that regular season with the Islanders, but in the playoffs, he was that playoff guy. So Eberle is one of those guys that could get you to the playoffs. Palmieri is one of those guys in the playoffs that thrives. But I think for Tatar, it's a situation where I don't know how much the Islanders trust Holmstrom to be an everyday player yet. I think he showed well defensively. The offense was lacking severely. And again, the Islanders have so many bottom six guys that could play a bottom six role much better than a Holmstrom can. The same thing with Wahlstrom is, Wahlstrom this year coming in off the ACL injury is he's got to prove he's a top 6 guy or a bottom 6 guy. And if he is a top 6 guy, that's fantastic. But if he's a bottom 6 guy, the Islanders have so many other guys that could play a bottom 6 role better where Wahlstrom doesn't fit. So I think if Tatar comes in and fills Parise's role, defensive forward who could score, you're not losing a whole lot with Parise being gone. But that being said, if Parise's back, again, going to Clutterbuck real quick, if Clutterbuck is unhealthy to play, you can move Fasching down there and you can put Tatar on that third line. So I think it's quite possible with how quiet it is. And I think the Islanders could fit him in cap-wise. But I think that Parise would 100% have to not be back. And you'd have to see really what Holmstrom shows you at camp. Because I get put Tatar on a PTO for any team, but the Islanders just makes a lot of sense to me. Even if you cut him, let Holmstrom see that this is not a safe spot. Like he's not guaranteed, or a guy like Wahlstrom isn't guaranteed, or Fasching even. Having veterans like that want to get a job, that'll push everybody. Last year at camp, if you remember, Bellows and Wahlstrom knew they had jobs on the roster. Not every day, like they had to fight for it, but there wasn't really chemistry for them not to make the team. And not competition for them not to make the team. And I think that having veterans that have played in the NHL before, produced in the NHL, having guys that just pushes everybody else. So I think for a PTO, it makes a lot of sense. But again, when there's quietness around a player that maybe should already be signed, you can't rule off that he's an Islander.
That's an issue that I've always had with the Islanders every single year. I don't think there's any competition for any spots ever. I think as you see at the end of the year or as training camp comes up, this guy's going to play here, he's going to play, and there's never competition. And I think competition brings the best out of everyone.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that's been the case with the Islanders for a while now, honestly, from when Trotz was there as well.
Yeah.
So it's just, from my perspective, I'd love to see that. I don't know if we are, because it's not what their MO has been since Lamoriello's been there.
And I think the depth signings this summer might already do enough for the competitiveness. Again, Gauthier, Kuhlman, and Pinho, they got signed. Pinho, I think, only played a couple of NHL games before, but Kuhlman's got, I think, 50 or so. Gauthier's been around. They'll push those young players because those guys have NHL experience, and Gauthier was on an NHL roster, and Kuhlman played. So I think it's different than the last couple of years where they really didn't have veterans pushing these youngsters who weren't ready. So I think this summer, this camp will be interesting because, again, a guy like Holmstrom, a guy like Johnson now who has to fight for his life. Fasching got a 2-year deal. It's not a guarantee he's in the lineup. So I think you'll definitely see bottom 6 movement, especially because it depends how camp goes and health-wise. But I think this year is different because, he went and got those depth players.
The question that I have too, you talked about Cal Clutterbuck. Now, he had a shoulder injury. Is there any reason to think that he won't be back and healthy and ready to go after that shoulder injury?
I think he's healthy. Again, last year we kept asking for every injury that happened, like, is it the same thing? And Lou or Lane would say no. I think that was more of the concerning part. Let's say it was his shoulder after he had season-ending shoulder surgery a year before last year. So I think if it was a shoulder, like, all right, okay, you know what the injury is, at least you get that fixed. And if you could play, great. But the amount of injuries, and like he took a shot off the finger, and he, the wrists when he got the skate cut. So these are different injuries, and you don't want to see his body deteriorate. But I think he is healthy going in. The question is, how long can he stay healthy? Because you look at last year and you can look at how many games he missed, but that doesn't take into consideration the games that he left and came back. So that's tough.
I'm not sure how we fit a guy like I still think Thomas Tatar has value around the league. I mean, even as a bottom 6 guy or as a middle 6 in a really bad team, but like he's a guy to where I think is a bottom 6. He's got talent. He's got value. And, I think about our roster, right? If we're going to have, let's say Parise hypothetically doesn't come back, it's just pretty much exchanged now for Oliver Wahlstrom. And I mean, like, if you were to sign a guy like Tatar, who's the odd man out? Is that, let's say Clutterbuck does play, he's healthy. Is it Wahlstrom who's taking the sit? Is it Hudson Fasching, who had a great year last year? Is he the one taking the sit? And it's just like, it would be really unfortunate, in my opinion, if they sign a guy like Tatar. Let's say it works out, the sun and the stars align, and we're sitting Hudson Fasching after a fantastic year for us last year over a guy like Thomas Tatar. And then, you've got healthy scratch Hudson Fasching and Simon Holmstrom.
Yeah, no, it is tough. But like we just talked about, that's the competitiveness. That's competition you want. You want that issue.
Sure.
Where, and worst comes to worst, listen, let's say Tatar isn't the better of the players at camp. Then you cut him or waive him. Again, like I said, Wahlstrom's going to get his shot. We know that. We know that he's going to be healthy for camp. Let's see how he looks. So again, Anders Lee came back early from an ACL injury, and it took him a little. Yeah, I think he scored in the first game of that season. Then it took him a while to get back into the groove. So let's see. Maybe he needs a couple of days off.
Looks like he's still struggling.
Who?
Anders Lee.
Yeah. No, the thing about Anders Lee, I know you've been calling Mr. Average and stuff, is after
Captain Average. Actually,
average.
He's below average now, but that's okay.
Is as a captain would, he took the blame for. He goes, this postseason was on me. I didn't come up with one big goal for this team. I mean, again, he's got to. They needed him, and it didn't work out. And you hope that he could learn from that again. Sometimes it's just age and speed and hand-eye coordination where you can't get that back.
Well, so, maybe it's the fact that they just played Carolina, and Carolina the Islanders aren't beating Carolina. Sorry.
Well, they outplayed them 5-on-5.
Well, you know what? They were missing 3 of their top 6 goals and played a backup goalie. And they still wind up losing in 6. They're not beating Carolina. Now, here's the thing. I live in the Carolina area, but Carolina, to me, I love every year I question what they do, and they come out smelling like a rose. I don't know what the hell they're doing, but it's working down there.
They're similar to the Islanders in the sense that, like when the Islanders were going back to the Cups, because their defense is suffocating. That defensive group suffocates you. And now they added Orlov. So like that defense is going to be stronger to play against. And also, like the Islanders they have Svechnikov and Aho, but are they perennial superstars? Not their team is mostly made up of those middle 6, second line, third line guys. It just works. And of course, Brindamore, I mean, they love to play for this guy, and they get good goaltending. I'm not saying Ronta's the best backup, but he was undefeated in the playoffs before he lost. He was undefeated at home until the Islanders beat them in Carolina that one game. So it's just crazy. It just works. Like you said, why does it work every time? Who knows? But they find a way. They get key contributions from a lot of guys in that lineup that maybe on other teams aren't getting the minutes they get there. And it just works.
I think their playing style is just absolutely death to us. I mean, they've beaten us 16 the last 20 times we played them, which is just a crazy statistic as well. This year, we did lose to Carolina, and they had some injuries. We've talked about ad nauseum, I feel like, on the show this offseason. And I know Grumpy wanted to kind of ask a question like this as to when. I'll let you phrase the question the way you wanted to, Grumpy. It was
I
something
forgot the question. You've been talking so long, I forgot everything I was going to say.
Yeah, you're rubbing your eyes. You're keeping you awake over there, Grumpy.
Yeah, no, you put me to sleep with that lilting tone of your voice.
You were going to ask a question about when you pull the plug, but
in
a much more ornate way. So I figured I'd let you broach the question.
Yeah, I guess
I want to ask Stefen. So I said, "You got it, Grump."
Lou has been saying we believe in this core, we believe in this core, we believe in this core. This core's never won anything. We've never won a division title, never won a conference title, never won a Stanley Cup. Okay. At some point in time, you have to transition to the next era. How many years realistically do you think this group has? Now we have, I need the offseason signing. Yeah, I know the low AAV for Engvall and Mayfield, who I love, and Varlamov. But my gosh, 7-year deals for guys who are middle of the lineup or a bottom 6 defenseman and a 35-year-old backup goalie just seems excessive to me. How long do we really think we can continue to do this and be anything more than a bubble playoff team?
Yeah. It's a great question. And again, you have the new players here like Horvat in his prime, Engvall in his prime. Again, you also have to hope that young guys, like if Romanov could play the way he played in the second half, that changes things. But like you said, they got guys locked in. Scott Mayfield, again, I think looking at the years, especially with the cap going up, those are movable contracts at the end of it if you needed to. But yeah, I think Clutterbuck after this year, I think that's probably it. His contract's done. I think Matt Martin has done.
Martin's the same thing. This is their last year.
So I think once the fourth line identity line moves on, you're going to see a different type of, you have no choice. You have to see a different type of Islanders hockey because that fourth line, again, it hasn't been the same fourth line it was. But again, too, it also impacts, like, do they move Pajot at the deadline? If they move Pajot, the third line is no longer your shutdown line. So everything's going to change one move at a time. And then slowly but surely you'll see, okay, wow, this is a different Islanders team. In terms of how many years with this core, I get it. And honestly depends when Brock Nelson starts playing his age because he's keeping this core live because he's doing things on the other side of 30. Like for me, for Nelson, I feel like he didn't start his career until Trotz got here. Just
Right.
Trotz tournament. So I think like him being over 30, he's more like 28, 27 in my eyes, because he didn't really take off until that happened. But yeah, eventually Anders Lee's not, people already talked about how Anders Lee can't play on the top 6 anymore. But the argument is everyone wants to move him to the bottom 6. However, you can't, everyone said, oh, if Parise retires, just move Lee to the 3rd line and go get some or whatever. You can't just do that. And I'll tell you why. Because Lee cannot play on a shutdown defensive line.
Thank you.
If the 4th line was still that shutdown defensive line, then of course Lee could play on that line. But as long as Pajot is being relied upon to go against the best the other team has to offer, Lee can't play there. So by default, if you're keeping Engvall with Nelson, which I think you have to do, Lee has no other place to play but that top line.
I look at it. I mean, I think we've looked at Anders Lee does not work with Matt Barzal. I mean,
it worked at the beginning, but once Trotz broke them up for that extended time after that, you could tell that he was trying to make it work with other players. And I think Lee works better with a Nelson, but for right now, just with how good, you have to at least give the Engvall-Nelson Palmieri line a shot. If they're bad, then eventually I think what you'll see is either Palmieri go up to that top line, or even let's see what happens with Wallstrom. But I think to start the season, I get what you're saying completely. They don't work well together. And I think it'll be different now, though, having Horvat in the middle as like a buffer. It's not Lee working just with Barzal how it was. You have a middleman who's very good when he's at the top of his game. So I think that might help, especially with foot speed, because Horvat could skate with Barzal. You were relying on Lee to skate with Barzal, which kind of wasn't fair to Lee. So I think things are different now. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I just think with the way the team is made up, there's really no other place to play Lee unless Wallstrom figures out where, you could play Lee on Pajot's line. If Fashing's on that line, and that line could still do enough defensively, where maybe Lee doesn't have to escape the defensive zone quicker. He could play more defensive role. So it's tough. It's a weird spot because you don't want to you never see a player kind of forced to be a top line player. You might force it the other way. Like for example, Wallstrom might not be ready to play a top line role. He's playing bottom 6, especially coming off an injury. That makes sense. But yeah, the Islanders are in a tough spot with Lee because, one, you can't move that contract. No, I don't think they want to. And they really need it to work because they didn't get a superstar to finish that line. And Lee could, again, as far as slow as Lee was and everything like that, and maybe he's below average at this point, he does find a way to score goals, even if it's not, again, we're not looking at situational scoring. It's just he scores goals. But I think, yeah, you're in a weird situation with Lee right now.
From my perspective, I look at Matt Barzal. You need to have someone on that line who can skate. Yeah. Casey looked good with him in limited. Why? Casey, and so did Hudson Fasching. Why? You know what? They pass and they move their feet. And it's just something Anders Lee just at this stage just not capable of doing. I mean, hey, neither can I. I'm not saying I should be on the first line either. But I just think, and you say Pierre Engvall, I'm not the biggest Pierre Engvall fan.
I think he's got a lot more to prove, for sure.
18 games is just too small a sample size for me, but at least he skates.
Yeah.
And I know that Lee works with Nelson. To me, I just think we need more speed on that first line. Otherwise, it's kind of like, we're playing with 2 guys on the first line and an anchor. And, for me, that's just kind of frustrating as a fan.
I completely understand that. I think, again, too, I think Engvall could really work with that top line. I think the speed, I think also, too, is, like I said, you just got to run that second line back. But I think quickly you could see, Lane, credit to Lane, he made in-game adjustments a lot with his lines, especially when things weren't working. So you could see one period of Engvall with, like in the first game of the year, if the first period, Lee and Barzal and Horvat are just not working, you could easily see Engvall play that for a period and see how it works. Again, training camp's going to determine a lot of that. Like I said, I think they're going to have no choice but to try Nelson with Palmieri and Engvall again. But I think, again, the Islanders are not in a situation where they could let the early first 10, 15 games get away from them. Because we talked to Barzal, and he said that he was just not happy having to sneak in every year. And it's about those games early in the year that they throw points away, where at the end of the year, of course, you make the playoffs in game 82. If you had played better early in the year, you're not in that situation. Also, too, there's so much pressure he talked about when you have to grind to get in physically and mentally, where, he wants to be looking at the standings in March and be, like maybe we're not the top seed in the division. Maybe we're a top wildcard spot. We at least have like a 4 or 5 game lead where we're not every period, every moment is so much pressure.
talking about grinding to get in.
Yeah.
Something we've had to do over the last 3-4 years is consistently trade away and maybe we didn't, I guess 2 years ago, we didn't do it during the trade deadline, but something we've been doing that seems to be commonplace for us now is trading away our first round draft pick at the deadline to make an addition of a piece to try to make a playoff push. Now, Dale also wants to ask, what's the likelihood we trade that pick away? I think it's going to be high, and I think we all would agree here on that on the show. Do you ever get the feeling, and I think I've asked you this on a Twitter space before, but do you ever get the feeling that Lou puts a lot of credence into what's the future impact going to be of trading this pick away? Grumpy and I broke it down. In the history of the Islanders, the 50-year history, there have been a total of 4 times that Lou Lamoriello has traded away our first round pick, and all other general managers in the history of the Islanders have only not had a first round pick 3 times in the remaining 45 years of the history of the Islanders. So it's, obviously Lou is, very different from what we're used to. Do you think he puts any sort of credence and thought, hey, there's going to be a team that's around here 3, 4, 5, 6 years from now?
My honest answer is no, because he's not going to be here. He wants to win right now. And I'm not saying I agree with trading a first round pick every year, because you have to build up a prospect pool, and having prospects is huge in terms of trading to get the guys you want. My mindset is for a team in win now mode, which the Islanders are. Unless you're getting a top 5, top 10 pick, those guys that you draft later on in the first round are not going to be ready to help you right now. And if you could trade a first round pick for someone that's proven NHL player that can help you right now, I completely understand making that move every day. Now, again, though, you have to look, and you have to hit on, if you're going to trade your first round pick, you got to hit on those later round picks. Now, the Islanders are hoping that, Dufour, a 5th rounder, Maggio, a 5th rounder, Isaiah George, I think, was a 3rd rounder. Those guys eventually become, because again, the Islanders don't have those first round picks, and it'll be amazing if those players become players that maybe fell in the draft when they shouldn't have, and they are legitimate first or early second. I just think Lou is focused on now because, quite frankly, why should he care what the team is like after he's gone? He's trying to win right now. He needs people in the seats. He wants this group's older too, so he wants them to. He doesn't. In like 10 years, most of this team's not going to be here. He's not going to be here. So I think it's all about winning now. And if you could get a player any day of the week instead of a question mark who might or may not help you and pan out in a couple of years, he's going to make that move every time.
Do you like that ideology? Let me ask you, because as the fan, I'm not a fan of the ideology. Grumpy's not a fan of the ideology. I feel like the more, again, we live in a lot of people who listen to our show, I'd say agree to that thought process, but there are other people who completely disagree, saying, yeah, we're extremely happy about the success that we've had. We've made 2 Eastern Conference Finals, even though they were a few years ago, but this is the most success we've ever had since being in
COVID years. The COVID years, I like to call them.
The COVID year, man, that's the only positive we can look back on during that time period is the Islanders' success that we had. Is that something that you feel? Is that something that you think? I don't, again, you really can't share too many opinions, but is that something that you're excited about? Do you think that should make fans excited thinking, or do you think a lot of fans are starting to come to the realization saying, oh God, that is an impending doom. That's a dark storm cloud that looks like it's headed our way. What do you feel the fan base talking to fans, kind of seeing? Where do you feel the fan base?
Well, I think it goes down to that poll where the trust in ownership, trust in management. I think, again, I personally believe what I said here is that if you could trade a first round pick for a proven NHL player that'll help you right now, again, unless it's like a top 10 pick, you should do it. But again, when you're doing it 4 or 5 years in a row and your team hasn't won, you got to kind of look and think, okay, is that player that I'm going to get right now? For example, going and getting DeBrincat. Should the Islanders if he was willing to sign long-term, should the Islanders send a first-round pick? Yes. Yeah, they should. That's a guy that's young, that scored 40 goals a couple of times. Bo Horvat, you can look back, that was a conditional first-round pick. But if Bo Horvat, again, he didn't play the way they hoped when he got here, but if Bo Horvat can score 35 goals and they win a championship over the course of his contract, that's the biggest thing with looking at these contracts too, is if I sign, let's say we sign Bo Horvat to his deal and the Islanders never win anything, but Horvat scores 50 goals 3 straight seasons. Let's say that happens. You could look at Horvat's contract, say he was a good player on his contract. They won nothing. If Horvat scores 25 goals and the Islanders win 1 championship over the next 8 years, contract was worth it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. So I think, again, like I said, if you could, maybe it's impending doom a couple years down the road. If the Islanders don't win with these guys, I just think right now is if you're looking at it with this team and how they don't have the prospects, they kind of have to go and trade those picks because then there's no homegrown. So I think that's the route.
I've got two questions,
Yep.
and then because I know we got to be respectful of Stefen's time there. He's got other obligations he's got to get to, and I'll let you ask a question. Two quick questions. Do you think, right, like with number one, what do you think the expectations are for this year? What are your realistic expectations for this season? And I'll let Grumpy have a question. But that's the big one.
Oh, thanks. You're gonna let me have a question? Thanks.
I'll let you have another. What do you think? What do you think realistically the team could be this year?
I think it's a wild card team again. Now, again, if we talk about the things that change, if the power plays 3% higher during the regular season, and maybe they beat the Coyotes for a change, right? I think that it won't take 82 games for them to make the playoffs as a wild card team, but I still think right now, just with the improvements other teams in the Metro and the East made, and again the Islanders not making changes, I don't know how high they could get. I think they're a top wild card team. Certainly they could fall below that for sure. I just think as much as I don't love what the Rangers did this offseason, as much as I have questions about the Devils goaltending, I just think you'll see the Devils and Carolina up there, and I think you will see the Rangers as a 3. I'm not saying the Islanders will be that far behind the Rangers for the top wildcard spot. I just think I think the top wildcard spot, again, when you don't have a superstar goal scorer, again, it's a grind, and I think that it will be another grind again.
Absolutely. And Grumpy, I want to let you have your last question there.
If you have another question, just ask.
Likelihood is we talked about Stanley Cup or bust. That was the big item 2 years ago, was Stanley Cup or bust. Seems like the tenure has changed where no longer is that the mindset that general manager and head coach come out and say. Maybe they'll say that this year to start the season. Who knows? Question being is, do you think it's a likelihood that we can win Stanley Cup? And if not, then, I rest my case. Time maybe to look other directions to try to build a Stanley Cup winner.
I think it's certainly possible. We just saw, Vegas with a third string goalie come and do what they did. We saw the Panthers, who struggled mightily during the year, go on a run. It's really about getting hot at the right time. It seems like the Islanders always go into the playoffs not hot, which I think does impact things for sure. And again, the reason the Islanders, when they got Pajot that year, I think they were 0-4-3 to end their year going into the playoffs, but they had a nice long break to get healthy, and that changes things. I think what this Islanders group can get to the playoffs, when you have Sorokin too, that changes everything, because if Sorokin doesn't allow those weaker goals, he can carry you to a cup final. But again, it's going to come down to those 1 or 2 goals where the Islanders have to figure out, if you don't have a superstar guy scoring, who's going to be that guy. Now, I think they're in a better situation like they were previous years because a guy like a Horvat, again, I know he hasn't been amazing and hasn't had that much experience in the playoffs, but I think this team's a little deeper. And when you get in, it's really just, can guys like, again, Anders Lee's got to step up, players like that. But I think you could certainly win a cup. I think the NHL is the league where it doesn't matter where you rank. You get into the playoffs, anything's possible. So for sure, I think this group could do it. It's just going to be a lot tougher for them than other teams because they are missing some key pieces that championship teams have.
Absolutely. It could it get hot? Could Sorokin play well? Sure. There's a lot of things that have to go right.
Exactly. And for every team that wins, though, you have to be healthy. A lot of things have to go right.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why we see number 1 seeds not win the cup.
I'd put our likelihood is low. I've always used it.
0. It's 0. Our chance of winning a Stanley Cup is 0.
I put less than 1%. Less than 1%.
No. It's 0. You want to know why? Carolina is still in our division.
Maybe Carolina gets knocked out.
We are not beating Carolina. We're not beating Carolina. I'm just going to tell you flat out, we're not beating Carolina. Unless Carolina disbands or the whole team gets hurt, we're not beating Carolina. Period. We're not beating Carolina. Guess who else we're not beating? We're not beating the Devils. We're not beating Toronto. We're not beating Florida. Why? All those teams skate and aggressive on the forecheck. It's death to us as an older, slower team. Sorry, Stefen.
I have no stake in the game.
I just can't see it. And for me, it's like, okay, how do we want to get? We want to win Stanley Cups. Now, I asked the question. You didn't give me a time frame on the core. You danced around. It was good. It was a good dance.
I know what I'm doing.
But what do you figure? Like 2 years tops before it's like hey, come on, this is enough.
With this group, I would say 2 years, and I guess the window with this group to win ultimately depends on their young guys that, again, not top prospects, but again, like if Wallstrom can become that scorer that the Islanders envision and finally figure it out. Again, every time a player like that, or if Dobson figures out a little bit defensively, that makes that window a little longer because those are your young guys still here. But if those guys don't take steps and you're relying on this core, I think 2 years with this group before you see significant changes.
And I've always said I'd much rather have Dobson with Pelech.
So I agree with that.
And I think that Romanov improved, but only when he played with Pulock.
Yep.
I'd love to see that. And I think, you mentioned the confidence issue for Noah Dobson. Well, I mean, if he's playing with, I think he's suffered, not power play wise, but defensively. I mean, Romanov to me, he's like a chicken with his head cut off out there a lot of times. Yeah, he's laying big checks, he's blocking shots, but he's not the most positionally sound guy. And I think that Dobson is not the best defensive defenseman. He's a modern NHL defenseman. I'd much rather see him with Adam Pelech myself.
I agree.
I don't know if that's something that Lane would even. I know they did in the playoffs a little bit, but I'd love to see that from day one. I think it makes them stronger overall.
Yeah, I think your best offensive defenseman should be with your best defensive defenseman. And I think, like you said with Romanov, I think what hurt Dobson, and he got a bad rep early in the year, and it was a lot on him, but also is he's there for his offense. And Romanov stepped way too much, too many odd man rushes. I think Romanov figured it out in the second half a little bit, like you said, alongside Pulock. I just think with Dobson, there was so much pressure for defense with Romanov. And then when he was with Aho, he had to play stronger defensively. I think Pelech will allow him to be more free mentally.
Yes.
To not have to think, because again, he's thinking too much out there. He's thinking too much, and he's over compartmentalizing all these plays on the ice because he has to worry about defense and he has to worry about getting up the rink. And I think if Pelech returns and is that guy, that shutdown guy, Dobson can flourish as an offensive. Again, I think Romanov too in year 2 could certainly help Dobson a lot. I think it'll catapult Dobson, but I think again, Pelech just is your ultimate shutdown guy. And that relieves so much pressure from Dobson where, again, all that pressure off him at 5-on-5 will 100% give him more confidence on the power play. Because in baseball, if you're a fielder and a hitter and you make a bad play in the field, it's going to affect your at-bat. So I think it's huge for Dobson. I also think they took the training wheels off. They should have given him one more year with a veteran. I think they jumped the gun with the Romanov move. I would have put him with Pelech. But I think they'll start with Pulock, Pelech. But I think quickly, if things don't work out with Dobson wherever he is, they got to get him right because he's clearly integral part because they need offense from the defense.
And last thing before you go, most tradable assets at the deadline are Wallstrom, Dobson, and a first-round pick.
I would say Pajot too because every playoff team needs a guy like that. I'd add that in.
Then if we're trading Pajot, that means we're losing.
Yes.
Otherwise, we're
that
not
does mean yes.
Okay.
Real quick, what is your most cherished piece of sports memorabilia that you have in your vast collection?
So I don't know if it's the most valued one, but my first ever Islander game I went to, they gave out Mike Pekka wooden mini sticks.
Ooh.
And I still have it. So that's probably the coolest thing I have just because it was my first. I can't tell you who they played. I think I was playing with the stick more than watching the game, but I think that was pretty cool to still have that.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much, Stefen, for coming on the show. Thank you so much. We'll try to have you on maybe sometime during the All-Star break or something. Things get busy. Again, you could see there, right? When you look at his name, you see writing for the Hockey News, writing for NHL.com. He's got his podcast too, Hockey Night NY. He does a lot. He's a very busy guy. So again, very thankful that you came on, Stefen, and had some time here for us. And maybe sometime, maybe if things die down during the All-Star break, if you're not kicking back, maybe in a nice sunny resort or something like that for a week, hopefully we'll have you on there, Stefen. But
he's a kid.
So much.
He's not doing anything.
Yeah, hold on.
I am 25.
In the summertime or Grumpy in the wintertime, it's nice to get away to get to a nice little maybe go to Cancun or a summer resort like that. Come on, Grumpy.
And here's the thing about Stefen, working for the Hockey News NHL.com, you know that he can read and write. So
that's what I was about to say. He brings certain things to the table.
I'm not good at either, but I can do both.
So, there you go.
Yeah.
See, TJ, so maybe there's hope for you yet.
There it is. Thanks so much, Stefen. Thank you.
Thanks, guys, for having me. Anytime. Let me know.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Stefen. Grumpy, always love having Stefen on. Again, one of the beat writers, one of the writers that I think fights the good fight, asks hard questions, as much as he can, with with how the regime runs there and the Islanders media cartel. So always love having him on. Always love his input and items of that nature. We have a few questions that I've got starred up here that were going on during the show that I want to make sure we can highlight. Yes, do we want to read the ad read? Is that what you're about to ask?
Yes.
Okay, let me pull that up here for us, Grump. Shit. I'm
just
glad you reminded me because I totally had forgotten about that.
I know you did. That's why I'm here. I'm here to remind you. You were like a little chatterbox today, I noticed.
Well, Grumpy, I was asking questions, and
you were asking a lot of questions.
Grumpy about to fall asleep again.
You were just like a nonstop question machine over there.
I told you, Grumpy, to have some stuff prepared there.
Well, I couldn't get a word in edgewise. You never stopped talking.
You like how I said, Grumpy? What type of questions you have to say?
That's after you asked 55 minutes of questions. It's like, oh, you got a question? Oh, jeez, I don't know.
You don't know, huh, Grump? Oh, God. Okay, perfect. We've got today, our ad is from DraftKings, ladies and gents. Oh, nice. Can you believe it? We've had 7 months without an NFL game. Crazy, right? Well, the good thing is that is over. The NFL is here, and DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is giving you a can't-miss offer for Week 1. This week, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5 on any NFL game. DraftKings is hooking everyone up with a game day greatness. All customers can take advantage of these two offers every single game day this September. Check the app to see what you get. Again, download now and use the promo code THPN and sign up. New customers can take home $200 in bonus bets instantly just by betting $5. Again, that's promo code THPN only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. The crown is yours. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.100gambler.net and your call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for a gambling problem if you call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. And please play responsibly on behalf of the Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. You must be 21 years or older, but age varies by jurisdiction. It's void in Ontario. See dkng.com/football for eligibility terms and responsible gambling resources. Again, bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance, and eligibility and deposit restrictions apply.
Oh, nice job, TJ.
I know.
I don't know if it was accurate, but hey.
Now, obviously, Stefen didn't have a chance to answer this, but Grumpy, I'll ask you this. Gungun wants to know, do you think you can ever be friends with Lou Lamoriello one day, or would you high stick him in the face?
No, absolutely we could be friends. As a matter of fact, I bet you if I knew him, we would be friends.
You think so?
Absolutely.
Think you'd be friends with him, Grumpy?
I'm charming.
You think he could charm over Lou Lamoriello?
Absolutely. Here's the thing. No one, once you know me, you like me. It's just that plain simple. If you don't, you're a freaking loser.
If you don't like him, it's his
thing. It's a you issue, not a me issue. I'll just put it that way.
Gracious. Got here a comment there. Drew L saying, yeah, in all honesty, out of all TJ's guests, Stefen is by far the most intellectual. It makes the podcast more interesting than some Lamanite pushing their agenda.
Very true.
Thank you so much, Drew. We love having Stefen on. And Freedom Fund Adventure says here, Stefen, should the Islanders miss the playoffs or get bounced early, will ownership retire Lou? And I think we maybe talked about this on the show. I think that Stefen was more in the thought process of you missed 2 out of 3 years. You know, there's going to definitely be some pointing of fingers, but who knows?
Maybe they need to re-examine. They have to. I would think you'd have to re-examine, wouldn't you?
It didn't seem as clear cut. The answer that, we would probably think as fans, like, hey, if you won 2 postseason games in 3 years, right, for a general manager, that's a team that's supposed to be competing for a Stanley Cup at the start of that 3-year window, you probably need to get fired. But it doesn't seem as clear cut that the answer would be ownership would make the reaction like that. And what does it look like for the roster? Martin, Clutterbuck, Palmieri gone soon. Can the Islanders trade Lee? They won't be able to. And how would you fix this?
The issue, again, that the Islanders have is they have no one in the minor leagues ready to step up. We've only had, realistically, 2 contributors since Lamarillo's taken over, and even though I don't give him credit for drafting Dobson and Wallstrom, can you name another guy from the farm system who stepped up in the last 5-6 years? There isn't any. There just isn't. And that's where the failure. I mean, you look at every other team in the league. I bet you there's no one that hasn't had someone who they've drafted in the last 5-6 years come up and play for the team. Only the Islanders. And like I said, I don't give him credit for Dobson and Wallstrom.
I don't either, but I think a lot of these teams too have not. We've traded away. Even when you look when Pittsburgh was competing for Stanley Cup, same thing with Washington. They didn't trade away their first round pick 4 years in a row,
No.
let alone possibly 5. Right? That looks like a very high possibility that this will be the 5th year in a row that we trade away our first round pick. The only way I could imagine us not doing that is if we are so far out of the playoff spot where it is impossible to even squint at and say we're not going to double down. If we're outside of the playoff push, if we're sitting at 5th in the division outside of a wild card spot, guarantee, bet your money that we're still going to add. The only way I could see is if we're at the deadline and we're sitting at 7th. 6th or 7th in the division. That's the only way I would see us not doubling down.
I don't see us being.
I don't see us being 6th or 7th. That's my point.
Yeah, I don't. Certainly not. I mean, Philadelphia and Columbus suck. Okay.
Well, there's your 7 and 8.
Well, then, yeah. So
that would mean that Washington and Pittsburgh would have to be over us.
I think Washington will be over us. I no doubt in my mind, Pittsburgh is going to be better than we are next year.
That's the only way I could see us not doubling down at the deadline is if you've got the 3 teams that were ahead of us, head over heels last year, Carolina, the Devils, the Rangers, and then you went ahead and flip-flopped in what did you call it? The mediocrity of suck or the suck zone with Washington and Pittsburgh. That's the only time I could see us not going ahead and doubling down on this roster. Other than that, I see us probably trading away that first round pick.
I say if we were in the Western Division, I think we could make playoffs. In the East, I don't see it. I just think there's too many. I just like how, and Stefen even did a little bit today where, we're expecting all these other teams look better on paper. Well, the Islanders are the same exact team that didn't do anything in the postseason. And we played a banged up. And here's the thing. People, Carolina, they had injuries. Well, Svechnikov was a huge loss 2 weeks before the end of the regular season. That was a big loss for them. That guy's I think he was a 37-goal scorer last year.
Yeah, he's important. I'd say he's extremely valuable player. Absolutely.
I mean, and you take a guy like that, your leading goal scorer off your team with 2 weeks to go. It's like, okay, well, all hands on deck. Teravainen goes out in game 1 or game 2.
I think it significantly impacts the team. I do. It's again, I don't think we're good enough to win a cup. I think Stefen said the only way we could is if a team gets hot. It's happened before. Again, like if you're going to seal a business deal, you don't say, hey, what's the likelihood that we're going to sign Mr. Smith to go ahead and to use our contracting company? You don't say, well, if things go right and, if he likes the way I smile at him and he likes the color of our company, I think maybe we're going to seal that business. That's not, you don't feel confident going into a deal like that. Rick Roma says if Tatar takes a PTO, his agent should be fired. He's a dud in the playoffs, but he should at least be able to get a 1-year deal. Yeah, Rick, I think that he, Thomas Tatar is going to sign a contract. I don't see him signing a PTO, and that's why I kind of made to clarify that too with Stefen. But Tatar is an excellent defensive forward. Now, could you imagine? Remember, they asked the question there to Cal Clutterbuck at the end of last year. Are you going to contemplate retiring? And he answered in that snide response back, I would know before you would, or something like that. Do you remember he kind of got snippy with that, Grumpy, at the end of the year?
He's going to play. He'll play.
Yes, that's my point. He's going to play this year.
I don't have a problem with Cal Clutterbuck playing. It's just he can't stay healthy anymore.
The reason I'm bringing that up is because if he's playing, I don't see us going after and targeting Thomas Tatar. I think Hudson Fasching deserves a spot. I don't see there's a way that Oliver Wahlstrom doesn't get a spot out of camp. And it's really, you're fighting over one spot. So you would have, if Cal Clutterbuck's healthy, you'd have, if you sign Thomas Tatar in a scenario, or because he's quiet, he hasn't signed anywhere. So that's why a lot of people are starting to speculate possibly the Islanders.
They're all the same guy. It doesn't matter. They're all the same guy. The Gauthier, even him coming in, they're all the same guy. We have a glut of bottom 6 guys. It doesn't matter. You could throw them all in a hat and just pull out 6. It's not going to matter. I'm not going to say that about Pageau. But, you know, I mean, I guess Palmieri will play on the second line this year. And it's like, okay, but everybody else except for Pageau, just throw their names in a hat and pull out 5 other guys. Casey's going to play when healthy, but the wingers, they're all interchangeable, every single one of them.
We would agree, though, that the reason I was bringing it up and kind of painting the picture, if that were the case, you've got Tom Sitar, Hudson Fasching, and Simon Holmstrom all fighting over the third line left wing spot. I just don't see that being the situation in the case. So, you know, again, unless Cal Clutterbuck is not playing and we don't know about that yet, I'd say that we probably are not going to sign Tom Sitar, but maybe I'm wrong. Rob G says here, hello, TJ and Grumpy. It's Islanders fan Rob G. Lost the picture of the Rottweiler, but it's still me, big time fan. Can't wait for the Islander season to start kicking off and Islanders start kicking butt. Great show. We got a whole bunch of people there saying great show, great guest. So obviously very, very appreciative of all the positive comments there. And speaking about Stefen, we love having him on. He's great wealth and great resource there, knowledge too. Coach Time B said, COVID may be coming back. Does it mean a Final Four again?
Maybe Lou's out there trying to push for COVID. I don't know.
Who knows? Christopher C said, Grumpy, what makes you think that we won't beat the Devils? We've owned them for centuries.
I thought we were going to beat the Devils last year to start the season. I thought we were going to be better than Devils. And guess what? The Devils, all their young guys grew up. And the Devils, I don't, even if the Devils take, I mean, they had what? They were third. What were they in the league? I think they were like 4th in the league in points. You think the Devils are taking a step back? I don't. Do you, TJ?
I think the Devils will take maybe a step back in their production in the regular season. We've talked about this. I could see them doing that. I think their postseason performance will be better this year than last year.
We're not beating the Devils.
Sure.
We're not beating the Devils. They're too fast for us. Again, teams with speed and who are aggressive on the forecheck, it's like our kryptonite. That has not changed in the last 5 years. The teams that can skate and are aggressive on the forecheck are death to the New York Islanders.
I agree.
I mean,
I agree.
We have, of those teams, including Carolina, we have the best goalie. We do. But you know what? They're better everywhere else. Carolina, except for goalie, there was not one player on the roster in their assigned location that I would take an Islander over a Carolina Hurricane. Not one. Not a one. I would take every single Carolina defenseman over our defenseman. Every single one. Their defense is really freaking good.
I like Noah Dobson, so you're not going to see me saying that.
Noah Dobson on Carolina he's a bottom pairing guy.
Noah Dobson on Carolina produces a lot more. I think you're wrong. I think Noah Dobson, if he's allowed to, okay, they have a heavy puck possession, offense. They have a heavy puck possession. They've got great outlet passes. They're great in the rush. I think you'd see point production for Noah Dobson be like 65, 70 points a year if he played for Carolina. He's already on a 50-point clip playing the turtle shell offense that we play. You think playing for Carolina where they fire the puck a shit ton of times on net to where they lead fast breaks going the other direction, you don't think he'll put up more points?
All I'm saying is I would take all of Carolina's defensemen over any of the one on the Islanders. Anyone.
Okay. You and I just disagree. That's fine. Synergy HD says UBS is a scam. How do we spend $1 billion on that? The fucking Cowboy Stadium is $0.1 billion, so $100 million more. That's it. All the other arenas don't come close to $500 million. I think it's a lot to do with the real estate, perhaps too. Is probably the reason why, as to why it was so damn expensive. UBS Arena. I've never been, so it's really tough for me to comment on how grandiose it looks on the inside, what all the structure went into it. It's really tough for me to comment, but I don't know. You know, that's what Malkin is, right? He develops property, does that for a living, and happened to pick up a hockey team along the way. So we'll see how that goes. The Property Brothers at its finest. David John McDonald says, Lou's channeling his inner L. Ron Hubbard and dosing everyone with LSD.
There you go.
We could have got a king's ransom for his JT, says Stro FP Roots. We could have, but who knows? Maybe Garth was right. Maybe it had something to do with ownership. Maybe it was all complete failure on Garth Snow's side. They both say different things. Rob G says here, wouldn't it be nice if Andersley had a 40-goal season?
He did once. Other than that, he's never scored more than 28. I mean, so tell me, was that a career year for him? Is he always about a 28-goal scorer? I mean, that's what you could say, right? He's a 25 to 28 goal scorer. That's what he is. One year you get 40.
I thought you were about to say, oh man, you said, wouldn't it be nice? Yes, but you need to wake up from your dreams. I mean, like the likelihood, the possibility of Anders Lee scoring 40 goals this year is slightly above the chances of the Islanders winning a Stanley Cup. Both very low.
Anything is possible. What's probable? I guess I like to look at probabilities, not Brady Anderson hit 50 home runs one year for the Baltimore Orioles. You know what? I don't think he hit more than 12 in any season the rest of his career. So was he a 50 home run guy or is he a 12 home run guy? All right. Sometimes you just get lucky like that.
Yeah.
Anders Lee is not getting lucky in his age 33-year-old season and scoring 40 goals. No.
Brian Jennings says here, Tatar would not change a thing. This team is destined for mediocrity. Long, boring, uneventful season ahead.
I agree. I just don't understand why everyone's saying, yep, the Islanders, they're going to make the playoffs. They could contend, for a top 2 spot in the division. Based on what? The last 30 games after the deadline, when they played 67% of their games were against teams that didn't make the playoffs? I don't know. I mean, Pierre Engvall. Are you going to believe that Pierre Engvall is the Pierre Engvall of the last 18 games of the regular season when he had 9 points? Is that the guy he's going to be? Or is he going to be the guy that he's been his whole career?
David Sean McDonald says here, Tatar is a better left winger than anybody on the roster at the position. I mean, think about it, right? What you're looking at left wing option wise is Anders Lee, Matt Martin. You're looking at Hudson Fasching if he's there playing, Wallstrom. And then you're looking at Pierre Engvall. Wallstrom's a right wing.
Okay.
The 4 left wingers, and I'll list them again for you, Grumpy. Anders Lee, Pierre Engvall, Hudson Fasching, Matt Martin.
What about Holmstrom? He plays both.
He's a healthy scratch.
Okay. Well, I believe he is too.
Healthy scratch.
Yeah, he's probably actually, if he played for the Islanders, he'd probably be the first line left wing.
That's what I was about to say. I'm like, David might actually have a point there because our left wings are so unbelievably shitty. Think about that. Our left wing depth chart, Anders Lee, 31. How old is he? 32 years old? 33? How old is he?
I believe he's 33.
33-year-old Anders Lee, who is a shell of what he used to be. Pierre Engvall, who had a good second half of the season after he was traded. Did he just catch lightning in a bottle? We'll find out. Then you've got Hudson Fasching, been a career, AHL/NHL tweener who finally found a little bit of mixture last year, and Matt Martin.
They actually have him listed as a right wing, Hudson Fasching.
Okay, he played some left wing. So here's the thing. If Oliver Wallstrom's playing, he's on the left wing on that third line, and Wallstrom's playing the right wing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just how it is. Robert Marshall says here, the ping pong champ has not been the same since the bubble, talking about Jean-Gabriel Pageau.
Yeah, well.
You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I thought he was a little bit better at the tail end last year, but he's not the same guy. Again, playing that style of hockey for a smaller player, they don't last long. They just don't last long. It's hard. It's hard and physical and grinding.
Coach Tommy B. Grumpy.
Why hasn't Lou invited TJ and the grumpy old man to a game in the suite? He doesn't like us. Truth is a painful thing.
Thomas Reese say, wait, TJ, you've never been to UBS? No, I've not. Neither myself or Grumpy have been to UBS Arena. Nope. Just haven't done it. Yeah. Good evening. UBS is really, really nice. Doesn't mean that it's a pawn. Doesn't
It
mean
isn't
that,
a pawn for ownership.
yep. Yeah. I was about to say it's definitely a pawn for ownership. The more and more I hear, the more and more it's just like, yeah, it's just the Property Brothers. It's a land grab. That's all it is. Brian Jennings says here, yeah, wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if I had a 12-inch long? Oh, look at you, Brian. Oh, good gracious. Yes.
But here's the thing. Maybe on a good day and, there's some type of wind tunnel, maybe that works for you, Brian. But, most times it's probably not going to be like that.
If you measure from your belly button, who knows? Maybe that works too.
From the
Frank
middle
says,
of your leg. Yeah.
but Frank says here, but didn't the Devils add a big time scorer from the Flames or someone? They added Tyler. Did they add Tyler Toffoli?
Yeah, I think they did. I can let you know in about 2 seconds.
Oh, okay. Okay. Why don't you talk a little bit about the Devils as I pull that up? I'll pull it up a lot quicker than you can.
Okay. They signed Timo Meyer to a long-term extension. He gave them nothing last year after the deadline. Nothing. So we expect him to be better.
It was Tyler Toffoli. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
so
the Devils are in good shape. They really are.
Yep. I was about to say, they lost guys like Severson. Sure. I'll just tell you this. I think that
they play a modern NHL style game.
Yep.
That's problematic.
They're a team that, okay, guys like Hughes are not going to get worse. Guys like Heischer aren't getting worse. Those are guys that are on the rise. Those are young players that you expect big things out of. Guys like Dougie Hamilton are still fantastic. You expect that Devils team, right? Nemec. What do you expect from him, right?
I mean, he was the second pick in the draft, 2 years ago. Figure he's just going to step right in, right? He's certainly more talented than Severson was. Is he going to give you? I mean, I never thought Severson was great. I didn't. I didn't think he was great defensively.
One good year.
But I didn't think he was great defensively. Nemec is going to, I mean, he has way more upside. Way more upside. The Devils, Tom Fitzgerald has done a great job as their general manager. They pulled the trigger to get Meyer. And you know what? I don't think they have a goaltender. I think that's eventually what's going to stop them. But regular season, what makes you think they're not going to be just as good, if not better, next year?
Synergy also says here, I really wanted Sprong, I think it was, or Milano.
I really wanted to spring for Milano.
Okay, it says or, so I thought Sprong, like Daniel Sprong, but I really wanted to spring for Milano. Why the F did they not sign Milano last year when he was a restricted free agent last year? He had a productive year with the Capitals on an $800,000 contract. Yep, that's right. We talked about that was the rumor. Sonny Milano was a guy that was going to go to the Islanders. He's from Long Island. He hadn't been signed, had the concussion issues there in Anaheim. He's going to be a guy that maybe we look to sign. Never happened. Washington took a flyer on him. He wound up panning out absolutely.
The reason is because their spots are already cemented in. And that's the case this year too. I don't think we're signing Thomas Tatar. I just don't see it. Why would they then someone else is going to have to sit. He doesn't make any moves in the offseason, just doesn't do it.
It just shows you that you don't need to sign back you don't need to sign Casey to a 6-year deal. You don't need to sign guys like Matt Martin to 4-year contracts. You don't need to sign Cal Clutterbuck when he's finished and washed to another 2-year extension. You don't need to sign guys on your bottom 2 lines to these huge contract extensions, because there will always be a guy like a Thomas Tatar. There will always be a Hudson Fasching. There are always guys that you can find at the bargain bin that give you a whole hell of a lot for a vet minimum contract, and you don't have to piss away 2.5 or 2 million or maybe sometimes even 3 million on a guy like that. It just doesn't make sense.
The Rangers
does it though.
The Rangers got a first or second line winger for $800,000
in Blake Wheeler.
That's right. And tell me, would it surprise you if Jonathan Quick has a bounce back year this year, getting limited games?
I think he's going to be playing a hell of a season. He was asked to be the starter there for the Kings. Could you realistically, what do you think? 25 tops 30 games for Jonathan Quick this year if Shesterkin stays healthy?
And tell me he's not going to be better being fresh. Now, here's the thing. Is he the Stanley Cup goaltender of the past? No, he's not.
Yep.
But as a backup, you could do a lot worse than Jonathan Quick. I think 25 games, 30 games, that's great. I mean, the Rangers are the one team in the division where you can say, all right, their goaltending is just as good as ours. I
Now,
mean,
I'm
that's
trying to
the
think.
only team.
Was it Gossesfair who we had on a PTO? Who is it that we had on a PTO a year ago or 2 years ago? The defenseman. Was it Shane Gossesfair, Grump?
No. Not Spiza. Spiza was like 5
many
years
years ago.
ago.
He was an offensive.
Wasn't it Gustafson?
No,
Was
what?
Gustafson on a PTO and we let him go last year?
Which Gustafson? There's a lot of
The
Gustafson.
guy who wound up going to did he go to Chicago? Or maybe he went to Washington. I don't know. Gustafson was a guy who we signed to a PTO. He didn't play any defense. He was only offense. Phil loved him.
Okay. Eric Gustafson. There it is. Eric
there you
Gustafson was the one we went ahead and did a PTO. I don't know why I thought it was Darius Gustafson.
And then we let him go, and he wound up signing for somebody else and was productive, but he still doesn't play any defense.
Okay. Still wouldn't have fit with our system and what we try to do. Okay. Makes sense. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't Gustafson and I wasn't losing my damn mind. Let's see here. Okay. Joseph C said, you guys still haven't told us your beef with Matt O'Leary. Just curious. They tried to get our show canceled. I mean, it's just that simple.
It wasn't Matt O'Leary. It was the other clown.
Yeah, Matt. We never talked to Matt. It was the other guy, the co-host, whoever it was. They tried to get us canceled because we joked around about their show like a few times. We joked around about their show, just kind of all in jokes. You know, our show. We don't say anything mean or maliciously. It was just all in jokes and jest. And they just try to get us canceled. Oh, right. The Hockey Podcast Network. Oh, take them off, do this. And it's not going to change what we do. Simple.
They're dead to me. They're dead to me.
Yeah, but that was what it was. That was what I think the fracturing was. It's like all water on the bridge. I couldn't tell you the last time. I don't think about them. Don't bring it up. But it's just like that's what happened on that situation. David Sean McDonald says here, Lee scores 25 plus goals a year. They're the most meaningless and non-factor type of goals as well.
And I will say, Stefen mentioned that, if Horvat scores 50 goals a year for 3 years, even if they don't win, that's going to look as a failure. Not true. If you're scoring 50 goals a year, you're earning your money. If you come in and you score 25 goals a year, making $8.5 million, you're not. It's just that plain and simple.
Let's see here. Oh God, just about as good as the odds of Lee getting 40 goals is to read the whole comment. Oh shit. I don't read the whole comment clean. That's for certain. God almighty. I'm trying to get here to see a few more comments. We're trying to run a little bit more of an abridged comment section where if they're going to be comments that add a laughter factor or they're going to have a question that poses additional conversation, those are the ones that we want to make sure we can highlight. Going into this year, we probably won't be able to have maybe 3.5 hour long podcast. We're doing 4 of those a week. It's just really tough. So we won't be able to do it at the same length. So we're still trying to make sure that we could read comments, get the voice of the people while making sure that it also adds production value and enjoy there for people who are there. So you feel like your voice is heard and also to add for the listeners after the fact, something that would be, it's like it's a good taste on their palate there. Joseph C says Luke Hughes and Simon Nemec are going to be great to add to a pretty loaded roster. The only problem is their goaltender situation. Now that's one thing I could see them addressing at the deadline, right? We talk about Connor Hellebuyck. Could you not see them making a move after Connor Hellebuyck's on the last year of his contract? You couldn't see them at the deadline, maybe adding a guy like that to their team.
I don't want to. If I'm the Devils, I don't want to wait to the deadline to get my goalie.
Let's say they add him a little bit earlier.
Well, I'm fine with that, but I mean, you got to get. I mean, as Bo Horvat says, it's tough. You got to have time to acclimate. I just think for a goaltender. Every player has to have a system, but you have to have communication with your defenseman.
Sure.
And I think that takes a little bit of time. I do. I think if you're a center, it's okay. We're doing this work on practice. I think it's more difficult for a goaltender to come in and necessarily shine or work with the defense. If I'm the Devils, I would have done that. That's a move I would have made already.
Robert Marshall says, Senile Little spent more on the bottom six than the top six for a few years. We had one of the most, third line was one of the most expensive third lines in all of hockey. We've always gone ahead and picked that as being an issue for certain.
That's how you get in trouble, in cap trouble, when you start overpaying your bottom six. Because that means you don't have money for your top six, and that means that your top six aren't that good, like our team. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just the way it is.
Oh, Sorokin will win. I don't know. The Vezina. He'll win the Vezina trophy this year.
Maybe. I mean, I thought he was great last year. Here's the thing. Olmark won last year. His numbers were phenomenal. Are they going to be as good next year? I don't think so. I mean, you don't think Olmark will put up numbers like he did last year, do you? No.
Absolutely.
1.82 goals against.
Neither will Swayman. The Boston won't be as good. Boston, people are expecting Boston to fall off freaking planet Earth. You know what? Taper your expectations. Things are never as good as you think, and they're never as bad as you think. So I don't think things are as bad as people are maybe thinking they could be for Boston. Could they be bad? Sure. Are they going to be as bad? No, because they still have Charlie McAvoy. They still have Brad Marchand. They still have Jake DeBrusk. They still have a hell of a team on the ice.
They lost Bergeron and Krejci. Those are big losses, but I'm going to tell you what. Bergeron was not the same player last year as he'd been in previous years. He was not as productive. And Krejci, same thing there.
And they lost Taylor Hall.
Yeah. But you know what? Here's the thing. Are they going to have 135 points? Nope. Are they going to have 100? Yeah. Their defense is better now. I don't think Boston is a threat to win the Stanley Cup. I think that's Toronto's division. I think Toronto's going to win that division with Florida right on their heels and Tampa. And then I think Boston and Tampa are going to be fighting 3 and 4.
JP says, that's crazy. Sorry to hear about that. Ridiculous, juvenile nonsense. Please, TJ and Grumpy, never become that self-important as the others in the New York Islanders podcast sphere. Yeah, we've had a lot of those people like that who do not want to associate with us, who were supposed to do collaborations that canceled at the last minute because of stuff like that. But yeah, we don't give a shit. I mean, you could disagree with us and yell and scream and shout. It doesn't matter. You know, I've never dislike any of the people. We love everybody that's on the podcast. We absolutely love them, even if we don't agree on anything that we talk about on the show.
They're snowflakes. All those other people are snowflakes. Pussies is what I like to call them.
Sindri said, what do you think we could have got for Nelson at the deadline if we retained 50% along with expiring deals if we trade him away?
Why would you shouldn't have for Brock Nelson? You wouldn't have to take any contract back
or any cap back.
Absolutely not. I mean, you could have got 2 1s for him. He would have. Tell me a team like Colorado couldn't have used him last year.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, you should have moved him. You should move him after next year when he's on an expiring deal. You know what's going to happen if the old man is still here? He's going to sign Brock Nelson back to a long-term extension.
Gotcha. Grumpy, we got a few comments here. We're going to try to go ahead and get through. I want to cover a few more here. HP Carlos just saying, hey there from Portugal. Thanks so much there, HP, for tuning in. We've got here Jack saying, I really think that bringing back the same shitty assistant coaches will be the same team. It's just stupid. The reason I'm bringing this up, do you think, I talked about the zebra and the stripes you can't change. Do you think if McLean's back, do you expect to have a different approach on the power play or the same shit we saw last year?
If you don't have a new assistant coach now, what makes you think? I mean, training camp opens.
Good.
Training camp opens up in 2 weeks.
Maybe they're keeping hush about it. That's the only thing I can imagine. Maybe they went internal hire. Maybe Zach Parise is going to run the power play, Grumpy.
Maybe.
We'll assistant. Who knows what's going to happen? I'm just saying, if they don't, it looks like they're not going to. Do you expect McLean to have a different approach on a power play this year? Or do you expect the same approach?
Same old.
Okay, gotcha. That's not good for us. I'll tell you that. Joseph C. said, Hellebuck seems bound for Jersey as much as I hate to admit it. 3 all-world goaltenders 30 miles apart from each other. Yeah, could you imagine if Hellebuck, Sorokin, Shesterkin all in that close area? That'd be something. You talk about our division becomes a whole hell of a lot tougher too if Hellebuyck gets moved to the Devils, because they've got prospects they can trade. They've got young players they could trade. They've got draft picks they can trade.
Yep.
What happens when you got a lot of those draft picks and you draft the right people? You can trade those away to a team, because Hellebuck's on an expiring deal.
You trade your first round draft pick or younger talents when you're close. That's when you do it, not to scrape into the playoffs. You do it when you're close. That's when you go all chips in, push everything in.
Rick Roma says here, TJ's right there. I've never thought the Bruins were as good as they played last season, and they're not as bad as people think this year. Yeah, I think they're somewhere in the middle. People think that there's no way they're going to make the postseason. I'm like, don't write them off yet. I still think that they have a chance, a very, very strong chance that they make the postseason.
They could be 15 games worse than they won last year and still make playoffs.
Yep, absolutely here. Okay, let's see here. Trying to find a few more. Podcaster on podcaster violence is Rick Roma, not cool. Yeah, that's it. God almighty. I'm reading some of these comments there, Grumpy. I'll let you read this one. You'll like to read this one, Grumpy.
Grumpy old man going old school, pussies, not snowflakes. Yes.
Yeah, look at you go there, Grumpy. Frank says here, the Devils are so loaded. They rebuilt after the hurricane. Lou Ron Hubbard destroyed them. And after, I'm sorry, they rebuilt the hurricane. Lou Ron Hubbard destroyed them, not the Hurricanes. I'm sorry, Hurricane Lou Ron Hubbard destroyed them. How long did it take them to recover? 10 years? I think at least 7, right?
10.
Yep. Joseph C says, yeah, Grumpy's 100% right. That would, that's
when you make a big move, when you're true Stanley Cup contenders. Exactly.
Absolutely. Sorokin could pitch a shutout and still miss the Vezina. He's an Islander. Wouldn't that be just sad? What do you think about the rumor, Jack? We talked about this earlier. Probably not the case. You've got a situation where you've got Hudson Fasching, you've got Simon Holmstrom, you've got Oliver Wahlstrom. If you bring back Tatar, let's assume that Parise is not coming back. I just don't think there's enough. There's not enough positions and roster spots available, unfortunately. But Grumpy, let's wrap things up here on this note. I will say this: there will be no show this Saturday, probably next Wednesday. So we'll probably go 2 shows without. I think we might be able to do one the Saturday after. I'm not sure. I think I'll be back
out of town again, TJ.
Yeah, I'm visiting you at MFer. That's right. I'll be out of town. I'll be with the grumpy old man. So yeah, we won't have a show when I'm visiting the grumpy old man. There will be no show this Saturday or next Wednesday, but hopefully the Saturday preceding. So we're thinking maybe on the September the 16th. I'm hoping. I think it's Rosh Hashanah, but hopefully the 16th we'll have a show. Don't hold me to it. I think we get back on the 16th early in the day, so maybe we can do something in the evening time. Who knows? But Grumpy, what do you want to say before we wrap things up here today?
I want to say love and laughter to everyone who listens, and even those who don't. From TJ the Grumpy Old Man, listen to the TJ and Grumpy Old Man show tomorrow with Sun X. It's our NFL kickoff show, and hey, we're ready to go.
Yes, that's right. Drew says, is there going to be a TJ and the Grumpy Old Man show tomorrow? Absolutely, there will be a TJ and the Grumpy Old Man show tomorrow. We'll be going live. I mean, that's going to be right there in the NFL game, buddy. I got my boy Travis Kelce. Better be healthy and ready to play. I'll tell you that much, Grumpy Old Man.
No,
I'm ready. I'm ready for my team to kiss. No, he's not out. I'm ready for my team to kick whoever I'm playing's ass. That's all I'm going to say. So, that being said, there will be a TJ and the Grumpy Old Man show tomorrow. How can you find the TJ and the Grumpy Old Man show? Grumpy, what is the TJ and the Grumpy Old Man show? Why do listeners of this show need to listen to the TJ and the Grumpy Old Man show? Why, Grumpy? Let us know why.
Because I'm on it. Pretty much that's the reason. And Sun X is now going to be in charge of what time we start the show. So I think tomorrow we'll start at 9 o'clock on time, 9 p.m.
The TJ and the Grumpy Old Man show. Grumpy could not recap what we are. It's a twice a week all sports podcast that happens Thursdays, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Sundays, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We talk anything and everything sports. We talk NHL, NFL, college athletics. We talk college football. We talk world soccer, world football. We talk baseball. We talk basketball, anything and everything sports on that show. Thursdays, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Sundays, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You could find the link to the TJ and the Grumpy Old Man show in the description below, or as a featured page on our YouTube channel. So you could scroll down and say, oh, look, here is the Islanders Never Say Die podcast here. We scroll down a little bit.
How come
Here
we
it
don't have
is,
a
the TJ
thousand?
and Grumpy Man show.
How come we don't have 1,000 subscribers to our show yet?
It's because, Grumpy, the media cartel is trying to keep us down, Grumpy. That's it.
That I believe.
My little brownie, this is a great way to end it. Goddamn NFL chatter until hockey starts. Such pain for me. That's right. My little brownie. Yeah, there it is. So we'll try to sprinkle in a lot of other things there. We have so many different podcasts to listen to. As an Islander fan, I wonder which one of those have a beef. I think I know. Oh, God. But thanks so much. And thank you, everybody, for the kind words about the great show. That's right. Hit the thumbs up. If you've enjoyed the content, hit thumbs up. Apparently, that always helps the algorithm. Subscribe on YouTube. You know the deal. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, etc. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to the show. We'll be live with you guys tomorrow at what time, Grumpy?
9 o'clock on the freaking button tomorrow.
9 o'clock on the button, Grumpy says.
On the button. Sun X is good. And here's the thing, you want to know who won't be ready? The guy right over here next to me. He won't be ready. But Sun X and I will be ready. Sun X, as long as Sun X knows how to start the show, it'll start on time.
Yeah. That's wishful thinking, Grumpy Old Man. But thank you so much, everybody, for watching the show. We'll be with you guys here live tomorrow. TJ and the Grumpy Old Man, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks so much, Grumpy, again, as always.
My pleasure.